Hello there and welcome to another tier list video, and this time it's about the First World's robots. Now I did say earlier before with the house robots I was going to try and do every single Robot Wars competitor, but obviously it might take a long time to do. However, we're going to be doing the First Wars because why not? Something to note obviously is that the First Wars was, how do I put it, very basic. It wasn't necessarily as high quality as later seasons of Robot Wars, so don't expect there to be many great designs, or that's all I'm going to say. So keep that in mind as I rank these, because obviously for their time, some of them are very good, some of them aren't very good. I have got a new category for this one. Unlike the House Robot one, there is a new category, and that is the Joke Bots category. Basically, there are some robots in Robot Wars which, let's be honest now, they weren't going to win anything. They were just there to have fun, and they were just goofy, robots. Say, for example, Granny's Revenge in Series 5 or Series 6. And there is at least one Joke Bot here, which I will list. And simply put, the reason why I'm not going to put them in the main ranking is because I don't feel like it's fair to say, oh, wow, this robot should be like S ranking because, it's a funny robot, or, it should be F tier because it's completely useless. I think at the end of the day, they are there to have fun. So yeah, without further ado, let's go through every single Robot Wars robot from the First Wars. Starting off with Barry. Barry was a super heavyweight that appeared in Heat A. For its design, I actually think the design looks great. I love the look of it. It's a very industrial-looking robot. Functionality, though, not very good. Barry was made by, I believe the team is called Team Power. And Team Power, they would later appear with Sonic. And what's funny is that Sonic actually used the chassis and wheels of Barry. You might actually be able to tell if you look at the wheels. But Barry itself, it looks great. It looks like it could actually be pretty formidable. It looks like it would be able to push robots about. It has that scoop at the front. It looks genuinely good. But as we saw in the first ever episode of Robot Wars, it struggled with movement. It was kind of awkward. And if I'm perfectly honest, it does look like it sort of like got stuck together, if that makes sense. Because Matilda was able to just slice through with her chainsaw. The chainsaw of all weapons was able to damage Barry. So, yeah, I'm going to put this in the great design but ineffective category because it is a decent-looking robot, but it was not very good. Next up is Body Hammer. Body Hammer is the Team Cold Fusion team's first robot. I just did Team Cold Fusion team. Jesus Christ. I love Cold Fusion Team. I love their robots. Or at least I like some of their robots. There are maybe one which I don't really like the look of, but the others I love. And Body Hammer is a great start. I think Body Hammer is a very unique looking robot. It's got that lovely copper armament, armor. Armament means weaponry. And speaking of weaponry, it's interchangeable. It has a spike, it has a hammer, hence the name Body Hammer. But for the most part, it used its speed for its for its ability to fight. It's a very good looking robot. It's a very functional robot. It's a very well engineered robot. It may or may not have let's just say been given a free pass during its episode. But nonetheless, I think Body Hammer is a great robot. I think Body Hammer is great, but it's not perfect. Like I said, it's not. How do I put it? There are a few little gremlins here and there. I'm not really a fan of the design, the shape of it. I think the shape of it is kind of weird, all things considered. But it's a nitpick. And it is a robot that's very low to the ground. It's got brilliant pushing power, and I love the interchangeable weaponry it uses. It came second in the First Wars, so you can tell it is a very well made machine, all things considered. Next up is Bugs. Bugs is one of the featherweights that appeared in Heat D. Heat D is such a great heat. It's got all these featherweights. The battles may not have been great in Heat D, but it made up for it for just how humorous of an episode it was. It's wonderful. Bugs is one of the more creative featherweights, in my opinion. It's got this ladybird pattern. I love the ladybird colouring of it. Its design is very weird, but is also quite cool, It looks like a bug. Functionality, Bugs actually was quite functional. It was able to move about quite well. It was quite speedy. I mean, turning, it was a bit awkward. I think Bugs is overall quite a good robot. It's decent for its time. You know, that's something I need to point out. It's decent for its time. I think it's below Body Hammer. Body Hammer, I think, is a much better machine person overall. But Bugs is good. Bugs is good. On to Cruella. Now, the thing about Series 1, and it's even said during the battle between Cruella and Robot the Bruce, in the sense that it's boxes and wedges. A lot of these robots are boxes and wedges. Very few of them are unique, if that makes sense. And Cruella is literally just a wedge. And it's got that cowl pattern look, you know, it's black with the white spots. I guess that's A for creativity. That's about it. There's nothing really good to say about Cruella. It's a very dull looking robot. It's functional, I guess. You know, it's okay-ish. Like, this is definitely middle of the road category. It's low to the ground. It's functional. It's not too terribly ugly, but it's also not very appealing, if that makes sense. So I don't know where to put it, honestly. I might put it on D tier because it's not dreadful in any sense of the word, but it is very low tier robot. It's not bad looking, but it's not great looking. It's not very effective, and it's not very ineffective. It's just there. Up next is Cunning Plan, the featherweight grand finalist. There was no way this thing was going to win the championship, but like, it's great that they thought that they could have like a big melee for the grand final, but there was no way this thing was going to win. Cunning Plan, again, is just a wedge, but again, it's one of those situations where, yeah, it's kind of a wedge, but at the same time, you have to appreciate just how great it was. It was very speedy around the arena. It was so speedy, in fact, it almost fell out of the arena. I think the actual design itself is almost reminiscent of the original La Machine from 1995, I believe, where it looked sort of like that. It was much bigger, obviously. And La Machine is a fantastic robot. Now, something I should probably mention, just because it's basic doesn't mean the design is completely crap. And Cunning Plan, design-wise, is very good. It's very basic, but it's very good. It's very simple, but it's effective. I don't know, like, I really like Cunning Plan, but again, like, the design is it's just a silver wedge. I don't want to put it in the effective but poor design, because it isn't a poor design. I'm just going to put it in the A tier. It's great, but it's obviously, you know, it's a silver wedge. Up next is Detonator. Now, Detonator is more infamous because of the frenzy fight in Series 4. Detonator is a very ugly looking robot. I get what they're trying to do with the design. You know, it's meant to look like a detonator. If you look at it from, you know, above, you know, the red spike, the red spear almost looks like the lever to detonate something, and the actual robot itself is the bomb. I guess that looks okay-ish if you think about it like that, but it's a very ugly looking robot. It's not very appealing. It looks very scrappily put together. And I know this is by the same team that does Napalm later on, which is pretty infamous for looking like a pile of scrap. But Detonator just isn't very good looking. Effectiveness, not very effective. There's not really much to say about Detonator. Detonator is definitely low tier. I'd say it's arguably worse than Cruella. I don't know. I don't know where to put it in F or D. I'm actually going to put it in F. It's not very good. Dreadnought. I like the early Dreadnought where it had that yellow and black design. I think that looks really nice. It's a very big, you know, looking robot. Well, at least it looks that way based on like the pictures and all that. And when it's in the arena, obviously it's probably normal sized. Now, Dreadnought looks great. It's got these little forks, which are pretty pathetic, all things considered. And of course, they get better forks later on. But it looks great for the first attempt. However, and this is a big however, it was not very functional. Dreadnought is infamous for having very, very poor reliability, and in its gauntlet run, even though it did well in the gauntlet, it basically burst into a ball of flames internally, and after that it just struggled to push forward, and it just wanted to be put out of its misery. And Dreadnought's not very great, all things considered. Great design, but very ineffective. It is 0 for effectiveness, but a 10 for design. Elvis. Now, Elvis returns in Series 2, and Elvis in Series 2, spoiler alert, has a great design. And it's quite functional. Elvis in Series 1, on the other hand, I don't know what the hell they were going for with this design. It looks like a UFO with Elvis's head in the top. Hence the name Elvis. I quite like the colour. The colour's great. It's quite glossy. And I guess they're trying to be very creative with the shell moving upwards and all that. But it just didn't function at all. Like, the shell was designed in such a way that it looked like it was too hard for it to even like move across like ramps and that. And why they even attempted to go up the ramp in the first place is anyone's question. The spike weapon doesn't look that useful at all. Honestly, Elvis is an F tier. Like, this might be probably the worst robot in this show, in Series 1, I should say, because it just doesn't look great. The only thing saving it is the color scheme, and everything else, functionality, it's not very functional. Luckily, they do improve it for Series 2, and they have a massive improvement for Series 2, which is great to know. Next up is the first of our stock robots, and that is Eubank the Mouse. Now, Eubank the Mouse actually appeared in the 1995 UK Open, which was the original Robot Wars pilot, which is a bit of lost media, really, all things considered, except for like the few clips we got from the First Great War VHS and what's the other one? Some clips from Heat D, featuring the Master and 4 fighting each other. And Eubank the Mouse was actually a part of that. It's a stock robot, and it's a stock robot that is so beloved that it actually was at filming all the time. In fact, in Series 2, it was in the pits, like, just stationary, sitting there. And it's wonderful in that sense. I think Eubank is clearly a joke robot. And the reason why I say that is because look at its stats board. The stats board says right hook, left hook. It's not to be taken seriously. And even for a joke bot, it was actually pretty functional. Like, it was able to like speed across the arena. I love the design. But it's clearly not going to win anything. It's clearly there for a laugh, but it's a great laugh. And honestly, I think Eubank is a great robot, all things considered. It didn't really get that badly damaged, and if it was in the actual competition, it would have been great to see this progress further. But because it was a stock robot, it had to drop out either in first round or the second round. And in this case, I think it was the second round. Next up is Full Metal Anorak. And for me, this is one of those forget-me bots. This is one of those robots which you don't really remember all that much because it's just kind of there. It's something that happened. You can sort of picture, okay, that robot existed at one point, but you don't really remember it that much. And it's not helped that its design, whilst it's not dreadful, the design isn't dreadful, it's not particularly memorable. It's sort of like this stealth bomber, but with like a, shark face on it. I guess that's kind of cool. It doesn't really have anything memorable about it. There's not really anything about Full Metal Anorak that's memorable. It's kind of a robot that existed at one point. Functionality-wise, Full Metal Anorak was a decent pusher. It had, I think it sort of had interchangeable weaponry, not like proper interchangeable weaponry, but enough to allow it to push other robots to, get like a scoop almost at the front to keep them at bay. I'm going to put in the effective but poor design. Like, the design isn't that memorable, all things considered. It's a very forgettable robot. It didn't really do all too much, but it was at least effective enough so that it isn't dreadful. I'm debating whether to actually put in the effective but poor design or just the D tier. I'm going to put it above just this once. Next up is the Grunt. Grunt is another one of these stock robots, and it's another one that appeared in the 95 Robot Wars pilot, the UK Open. And what's interesting about Grunt is that it was actually the first ever cluster bot. You probably don't think that because you only saw one in the TV show, but the original Grunt had a second one. And what's interesting is that Grunt, I'd argue, looked better in 1995 than it did in the show. Like, I don't know what they did with the design in the show, like that. They painted it white, and they just stuck a bunch of crap on the top of it, and it kind of ruined the design. Like, Grunt in 1995 was quite simple. It was basically a silver wedge with like red like lining and red patterning, but it at least looked decent. It at least looked slick and nice. Grunt here just looks kind of like a mess. It's just sort of like they kind of ruined the design a bit. That said, it was pretty effective. Even for a stock bot, this was a pretty effective stock bot. It was able to charge through, get under other robots. Obviously, it's pretty quick. But alas, it was a stock bot. It had to lose in the second round, hence why it sort of just killed itself against Shunt. Which is a shame because I think, based on what we saw in 1995, it looked like it was pretty decent. It wasn't, obviously, it didn't win against the likes of La Machine or the Master, but it was still able to scoop under them. It was still able to push them about. So Grunt is again another effective but poor design robot. I'm actually going to move Full Metal Anorak down. I don't think it's that great. I'm going to put it just below Cruella because I think Cruella's better. But Grunt, yeah, it's an effective robot, but it wasn't the best looking. They kind of ruined the design from the 90s. Honestly. Next up is one of my favorite robots from the classic era, from the very, very classic era, and that is Killertron. I've always loved Killertron. Killertron's paintwork being this fluorescent pink with the, yellow spikes. It looks so iconic as a robot. And the pickaxe as well. I love the pickaxe, the way it goes 180 degrees, so swinging back and forth. It's this maddening robot. It is sort of the inspiration for T.R.A.C.I.E later on. I guess you could say it was certainly the best, or one of the best axes in Robot Wars at the time. Series 1's Killertron is more or less the same as the one you see in Series 2. The difference is this one is red and pink, so it's got a red underneath, but it's got these pink splodges that are like stripes. And you might not notice it at first because when you see it, it looks like it's just fully pink. But if you look at close-up pictures, you look at HD pictures of it, it's actually pink splodges on red armor, which is very interesting to think. Killertron was very effective as well, even for Series 1. It was able to hammer down. It may not have been as destructive as Series 2's Killertron, which I think is a far more powerful machine, even if I do not really like the orange color scheme later on. But nonetheless, Killertron, for me, is my first S tier. I think Killertron rocks. I love it a lot. Next up is another one of these forget-me-bots from Series 1, and that's Crazy Tokyo. With a name like that, Crazy Tokyo, you'd think would be this insane-looking robot. But no, it's actually just a weird-looking pirate ship robot that's a feather. I have no idea what that design is. That design looks it looks hideous. It's just a mashup of random crap, and I don't even know what they're trying to go with. The color scheme isn't very appealing either, and functionality, I hate to say it, but it wasn't very functional either. It was poorly driven. It was just, effectiveness, not very effective. Ugly, 100%. At least Elvis had a pretty color scheme. At least Elvis had a pretty color scheme. F tier for sure. Laybot. Laybot is one of those interesting robots because it's a very basic color scheme, very basic design, but I think because it's that holographic metal look, it looks quite nice. The weaponry is very, very unique. It's this weird spear thing. It's kind of interesting. It was quite effective, even with the design being kind of weird looking. It looks almost like a coffin, but at the same time, it's a very creative design. The functionality of the weapon. It was quite effective, all things considered. Laybot, there's a reason why Laybot is rather remembered. Although I think it's mostly remembered for the Mortis fight more than it being it itself, I should say. Yeah, Laybot, I think Laybot goes into A tier. It's a very good looking robot. It's decent in every sense of the word. Next up is the robot that defeated Laybot, Mortis. Series 1 Mortis, it is, in my opinion, the ugliest of the Mortis machines. But that's not saying much, I should say. Well, that's not saying a lot, because it's still very good looking, I should say. I love the ramming blade at the front. I love the fact that the tracks you can see the tracks all the way through. It's not just, at the bottom. It's actually all the way through. You can see it on the sides at the top, and it's still connected by like an armor plane that keeps it protected. It is a very reliable robot, all things considered, even if its turning was sort of slippery sometimes. The axe was very powerful. We saw it with Laybot just hammered away. It's the battle that inspired Razor, Laybot versus Mortis. So, it's a very iconic fight in that sense. Yeah, Mortis is just great. Like, Mortis is wonderful. I do prefer the later Mortises, if that makes sense. I think they are far more better, but for first start, this is a great one. It's not as good as Killatron. No, I still love Killatron. And, of course, everyone's favourite Irish robot. It is Nemesis. Nemesis is technically a joke bot. It shouldn't really... I could put it in the joke bot right at the top, but when it comes to Nemesis and Detonator for that matter, it's one of these robots that, they aren't going to really win anything, but they're also very, very, very effective machines. And Nemesis in particular, there's so much characterization with it. It's got, the eyes on the wheel hubs looking like, almost like snail eyes, protruding. The smile with the spike coming out from the middle like a tongue. And of course the fur. Who doesn't love the red fur virus, as they called it? It's just such a wonderful characterized design. And Nemesis is just such a great looking robot. In terms of functionality, it was very functional. This is the tragedy of Nemesis, because Nemesis is one of those robots that it always lost at the arena stages, which is a shame, because I think it could have done very, very, very well had it progressed further. And honestly, Nemesis, it was able to push Shunt off the sumo ring. It was able to traverse across the gauntlet in a breeze, It was even able to survive against Roadblock. It just, got sawn to pieces pretty much, but it's able to still be durable and only slightly caught fire. Nemesis is a really good machine, even for Series 1 standards. Yeah, it's technically a joke bot, but I'm actually going to put it in S tier because it is just too good. Now, Plunderbird, another technically a joke bot robot. The Plunderbird team have always come up with some wonderful designs. I do have a preference over which is my favourite Plunderbird design, but we're going to have to wait quite some time before we see it. But Series 1's Plunderbird it's probably one of the weaker designs, if I'm perfectly honest. It's a great start, obviously. All the Plunderbird robots pretty much all look the same, more or less. Series 1 Plunderbird, it did have interchangeable weaponry. We just didn't ever get to see it because it was knocked out very early on. The control resulted in it basically getting trapped, and it was unable to progress further, which is a real shame, because I think Plunderbird is actually a very good-looking robot. But we never really got to see anything else. That's the problem with Plunderbird. We didn't see how functional it was. We didn't see all the interchangeable weaponry, like the sword blade and the spikes. And that's a real shame. It's a real shame. It's definitely a big what-if robot, I feel. I'm going to rank it highest on the great design but ineffective robots tier, because it looks great. It probably could have been very functional, but we never got the chance. And on to Prince of Darkness. Now, Prince of Darkness has the unceremonious title of being the only robot in Robot Wars history to be completely insulted by the presenter for how crap it looked. It at least got a slight redesign in halfway through the episode. Obviously, it went from a very basic red robot with wheels to a slightly darker red robot with a spike at the front and all sorts of stuff on it. Like, it's funny seeing how this robot like went from a very shitty look to a slightly less shitty look. So in terms of design, it is pretty much a -10. Prince of Darkness, there's a reason why people like Jeremy Clarkson just insulted this machine every chance he got. Why he was actually hoping it would just be eliminated. Unfortunately, it was quite effective, and it was pretty good for its time. Obviously, the exposed wheels was its Achilles heel, and it was eventually defeated. But at the same time, it was at least decent. So, it's a very ugly robot, but it goes in the effective but poor design. On to what is obviously one of the most unique robots to appear in Robot Wars, even though it's arguably not even a robot because it's just an RC kind of paper mache ball. And that's Psycho Sprout. Psycho Sprout is... Psycho Sprout is... It's clearly a joke bot. There's no way this thing was going to win anything. There's no way this thing was going to succeed anywhere. It is there to poke fun at, to laugh at, to get some amusement out of, to get your kicks. And that's it. Obviously, it got eliminated in the second round during the trial. It didn't even move. Whereas the other robots managed to move and make some progress. Psycho Sprout just stayed dead. It was a dead robot standing, essentially. But it's definitely one of the most creative robots. It's definitely a silly robot, and it's definitely an amusing robot. It goes in the joke bot category for being a fun robot. You cannot deny it's fun. You know, it's not effective, it's not very good at all, but it's fun. Okay, so next up is Reali-T. Now, Reali-T has a lot of controversy behind it because Reali-T is one of those robots that arguably should have won but lost. And in this case, it lost to Body Hammer, despite it technically doing a lot more. Reali-T, you know, it's made to look sort of like a spaceship. It's got this like meshy like rope around it. It's got tape for armor. It has these two little aliens in the like top bit, which look great. It's a very functional machine. This is a very effective machine. It's a very good robot and is a deserving Heat finalist. Shame it lost, and you know, like I said, there's a lot of controversy of whether or not it should have won, whether or not it should have got through, or maybe its loss was deserved. And obviously, Body Hammer, you know, was a great robot. Don't get me wrong. Reali-T, and this is the thing, Reali-T's design is a bit of a hit and a miss. Like, I love the little aliens. I love, like, the idea behind it. But at the same time, its armor is literally just skipping ropes and tape. I like to repeat, it's skipping ropes and tape with two spikes at the front. It's the type of, like, robot you see, like, people, like, make on YouTube as, like, a bit of fun, fighting with their friends. Like, it's so, like, basic, you know, it's made out of like kitchen appliances basically. It's a shame because Reali-T was a very, very good robot. It's very effective, but its design is just it's made out of tape. It's made out of tape. You know, imagine making a robot and you're just wrapping it with tape. I'm actually going to put it on the highest on the effective but poor design because it is close to an A tier. This is, like, close to going to the A tier, but it literally is because of that. Next up is Rex Garrett's first ever robot for Robot Wars, and that is the wonderful Recyclops. I love this design. This design is so wonderful. Essentially, it is a big round robot with a big eye, and I love the artwork for it. But not only that, the tongue is a flipper. So this is one of the most unique looking weapons in Robot Wars. It's a robot that is sort of like a goblin shark in a way. It's like mouth comes out and then like the horrible weaponry comes into play. And in this case, the flipper flips the other robots over, and it's, you'd think if you're going to create a flipper, you just create like a wedge, something that can flip the end. And of course, he does do that eventually. But Recyclops is such a unique looking design, and it was pretty good, all things considered. I mean, it wasn't 100% effective. I will say this, it wasn't 100% effective. Its slowness kind of struggled, and its chain falling off in, I think, at least 2 of its fights didn't really spell out a lot of effectiveness there. But design-wise, this is probably one of the best Series 1 designs by far. I love the look of it. It is wonderful. I'm going to put it in A tier. I'm going to put it in high A tier because it is a very good design, but its effectiveness is somewhat brought down, even though it was a very powerful machine, all things considered. And the flipper was quite good, even though we didn't really get to see a lot of it. It's just sort of brought down by that aspect. Next up is the Series 1 champion themselves, Roadblock. And Roadblock, I love the robots look. I love that it's literally just a bunch of road signs plastered on it. And it's not like they just got a bunch of road signs and like mashed it all together like a paper, like, you know, a collage. But rather it's just one big road sign and another, you know, used as a wedge. And it looks so great. Like, Roadblock is one of those really iconic robots. Like, you can sort of just say its name to anyone and you instantly can picture it. The shape of it is wonderful. I think the wedge looks great. I love the rounded back as well. The striped pattern looks even better. I should say the black and yellow with the red and black in the center to indicate the danger zone of that saw blade, which is really good. A very effective robot. And it's interesting because this is, once again, a very basic looking robot, but they managed to make it look creative. They managed to make it look really appealing visually. And what makes it even better is, or at least in my eyes, is that I actually prefer this version over the Series 2 version, but only because I think the Series 2 version, I kind of don't like the darker color scheme they used. With this, is bright and wonderful. I love it. So I'm going to put it... I actually prefer Tron and Nemesis over Roadblock, but it's still a fantastic robot nonetheless. Now, Robot the Bruce. Robot the Bruce, I was debating about myself for quite some time over, like, where I was going to rank Robot the Bruce, because it is a box. It is literally just a box. But it was 100% effective. It was able to just ram over robots. It was so well engineered. It was a beauty, a marvel for engineering. However, it is a box. But at the same time, and this is where, again, you can do a simple shape as long as you can make it look good or function really well. And in this case, Perspex armor. Perspex armor is the type of armor that manages to be a saving grace for a lot of robots, because a lot of robots can be very basic, very dull, I guess you could say. But by making it Perspex and seeing like the internals and all that, it manages to make it even better, in my opinion. Like, I'm a sucker for Perspex armor. Terahertz, for example, wonderful robot. Tornado, another wonderful robot. You know, Robot the Bruce, absolutely fantastic robot. And in my opinion, Robot the Bruce is probably my favourite of the Series 1 robots. Like, I love the look of the Perspex armor. It manages to make this box on wheels look so good. This weaponless box on wheels, it makes it look so good. And it's all it did was have the right type of armor. That's the way I see it. So Robot the Bruce, S tier, number 1, the best robot in Series 1, in my opinion, of course. And of course, you know, there is the hindsight that this is the predecessor to Chaos 2. One of the greatest robots in robots history. Next up is Saturn. Saturn is a very unusual named robot. I really never understood the name at all. I guess it's meant to be a devil ox thing. Its design is... I love the paint job they've done. Like, this is another case of very basic design, but as long as they made it look appealing visually, it succeeds. So design-wise, it's great. Functionality, it was kind of slow. It was kind of boxy, and it kind of got itself trapped a few times. So much so that Matilda even soared straight through it. Design-wise, it's great. Functionality, not so great. I'm going to put it like below Dreadnought. So it's a good robot overall, but it's just the functionality. As for effectiveness but poor design, we have Scrapper. Scrapper, there's one saving grace to Scrapper's design, and that is, I like the saw blades and the eyes. That's about it. Color-wise, it's kind of, I don't like it. I don't like that, 2 panels are red, but the other panels are all silver. Like, what was that about? Design-wise, it looks great. Not design-wise. The weapon-wise, it looks great. Didn't really get to use those weapons all that much. It got flipped over by, I was about to say Cassius, the Cyclops. Yeah, like, honestly, this is a robot which it's an ugly duckling. It's a very ugly duckling, but it's an ugly duckling that it was at least able to work. It kind of got picked on by the house robots a bit, which is a real shame, because I don't think it was that like dreadful in that sense, but it did kind of get picked on. It's an ugly duckling, but it's an ugly duckling that almost could have worked if they just did a few little changes here and there. So Scrapper, I'm actually going to put below Reali-T, because Reali-T, I think, is one of those robots that should be in like A tier, but it's just missed out. And of course, Scrapper, we do know that does become GBA, which is a beautiful robot in Series 2, and another great robot in Series 6. Next up is Shogun. Shogun is interesting because, again, this is one of those robots that looks very good. The visual paint job they've done is wonderful. And shape-wise, it looks great. Like, design-wise, it looks great. Functionality, it was okay. It wasn't dreadful. It was control-wise, it wasn't very good. It didn't seem like it was able to do all too much. It was mostly just going to push robots about. I don't think those lifting forks really did anything. It lost to Kilotron after Kilotron just hammered it once, and it didn't even go straight through Shogun. It's I'm struggling to think where to put Shogun, because Shogun isn't dreadful, but it isn't A tier. This is definitely a C tier area, so I'm gonna put it in the great design, and I'm gonna put it below Plunderbird, but it's still quite high up. Scarab is a name that is used so many different times in Real Wars. It's kind of ridiculous. You'd think people who make robots would make sure not to reuse names, but Scarab is one of those names that people just love to reuse. It's kind of pitiful. Scarab in this case, it looks like some sort of Egyptian robot. I like that aspect to it, and obviously the team would return with Ramesses II, which didn't look as Egyptian, but still same sort of design. Yeah, I quite like the design. I think functional wise, it was pretty good. Scarab, I think Scarab goes into A tier. It's gonna be below A tier, but it's still A tier. Another great design, but you gotta question its effectiveness, is the Blob. The Blob is one of those forget-me-bots, but it's also a forget-me-bot which, there's a shady bit of your mind that you can remember somewhat. And yeah, the Blob is the Blob. It looks like a blob, obviously, and I love the artwork they've used on it. I think that's great. In terms of effectiveness, there's not really much you can really remember. It was quite slow, quite ponderous. It didn't really do an awful lot. It kind of got trapped a few times. This is, Yeah, great design, but ineffective. Low tier. Demolisher is the Series 2 featherweight champion, but in Series 1, it was just this speed demon that was speeding all about. It was a wonderful little crazy robot. I love it. It's, once again, this is one of those robots that you got to question, is it actually a robot? Because it's basically an RC car they've just put a metal armor on top of. It's funny because Demolisher is one of those robots that you see in like the magazines and like, what was it, the Builder's Guide as well, like being presented by other people. Like, I don't know why Demolisher was so popular. Like, it's weird how popular this thing was, but it's very popular. And I think because it's so basic but also so effective, it was good in that sense. Yeah, Demolisher I think goes in A tier. It was effective. Its design may be somewhat simple, but it's just so wonderful to look at. It's, you know, made some creative choices with the armament. I just said armament again. I mean, armor. God, I'm sounding like Jonathan Pierce. I think it's better than... I think it's better than Bugs. Not as good as Cunning Plan, though. Cunning Plan was far better. It's the best featherweight. So, next up is Talk of the Devil, the first of these Talk machines. Although I don't think it's related to Team Talk, I don't really remember. I don't think it is. I think it's just one of the first like robots to use Talk as a pun. A for creativity, certainly. I love the look of it. It looks amazing. It's a very like beastly looking robot. That said, where's the whole devil aspect to it? Because it looks more like a giant like hog, a pig almost, or a snake head. It doesn't really look like a demon or a devil of sorts. It's still a great looking robot. I love the weaponry. I love the flywheel at the back. The spike out the front, which serves like a tongue. It is so creative. Functionality wise, it was quite slow. It was kind of barrely. It was easily pushed about, but it wasn't too dreadful either. I think this goes into not high A tier. This goes into like low A tier. It was not like inefficient, if that makes sense. It was able to, do all sorts of stuff, but it was definitely a how do I put it? It was definitely a robot that we didn't see a lot of. So it's like with Plunderbird, you gotta wonder, is it, isn't it? Tracy, which is, in my opinion, the ugliest of all the grand finalist robots. However, that's not to discriminate against its design completely. You see, the design of Tracy is sort of the inspiration for future, Rambot designs in a way. It's this invertible robot with spikes in the sides, and it's able to charge through and, shoot at and just ram into other robots. It did that with Prince of Darkness. That said, there is a massive flaw of the design. I hate the gaps at the top and the bottom. That looks so hideous to look at. It does not look very good at all. And I know it's got like caster wheels. Yeah, that might have affected its drive, all things considered, especially because it lost straight away in Series 1's grand final. Like, it was I think it was the first grand finalist to lose. That said, like, Tracy still is a very good looking robot, and it was pretty functional, pretty efficient. It was very good, all things considered. I'm going to put it below Demolisher, but it's still in 80. It's still good enough. Ugly bot by name and ugly bot by nature. One of the most forgettable robots in Robot Wars history. It was hideous to look at. Didn't really work at all. It's F tier. Is it as bad as Crazy Tokyo? Yeah, it is. It is. Vector of Armageddon. Adam Clark's first machine, and it was basically a miniaturized version of La Machine. It's a very good looking robot. I'm going to say that right now. It was a very, very good looking robot. That said, and this is where, I have a little bit of conflict. We didn't see much of it. It was very low to ground to the point that it couldn't go over, ramps. I think if we saw more of it, it probably would have been very functional. It looked like it was decent. That's the thing. It looked like it was decent. It looked okay, and that's the problem. I'm going to put it in the great design but inefficient category because we just didn't see it. It's one of those unknown quantities where had we seen more, it probably would have blown our minds. I'm gonna put it right by Shogun. It's around the same place. Speaking of names that are almost always used, there's always robots which have the Hog name, and Wedgehog. I think this is Wedgehog. I always get it confused with Warthog, which is next up. Wedgehog. It was the first of the Wedgehogs, I guess you could say. I think there was a robot in BattleBots called Wedgehog as well. Come to think about it, Jesus. What is it with the name Hog that people love? Yeah, although this doesn't look like a Wedgehog. Wedgehog is one of the Series 1 robots which, funnily enough, still survives to this very day. Same with Vector of Armageddon, actually, come to think about it. Like, if we would talk about robots that are still around, Cunning Plan, we know, is still around. Plunderbird 1, sort of. Nemesis, definitely still around. Or sort of still around. And Wedgehog, which is one of the more obscure items used. I think it's owned by the team Team Mad, who are the team who operate Apollo. So there's a fun fact for you. But nonetheless, Wedgehog looks kind of cool. I will say this. It was kind of slow, all things considered. It's an effective robot. It looks pretty good. The axe was pretty pitiful, all things considered. It was like a little pick. Yeah, I think this is a very low A tier. A low A tier, in my opinion. That's what I'm going to say. Warthog looks great. I will say this. Warthog looks great. It actually looks like a hog. Warthog looks great. It looks fantastic. It looks like it would do a lot of great stuff. It was ineffective. The problem with Warthog is that the robot just didn't really function all that well. It got trapped straight away in the gauntlet. And in Series 2, I believe it broke down, and just was on the flame pit. So yeah, Warthog is not very effective, which is a shame because I think its design looks great, and I think if you were to like fix its reliability, it would be a robot that you could probably be able to make really effective. So yeah, this is definitely a great design, but it just lacks in the functionality because it genuinely isn't very good. And on to our final robot, and it's another stock robot, and it's also another 95 robot. This is Wysiwyg. What you see is what you get. I believe this version of Wysiwyg got rid of the spikes from the sides. They used to have bullet holes, which had spikes that would come out. And Wysiwyg in 95 and 96 for that matter. No, not 95, 96. And we know we got footage of the 96 championship. There was even a VHS of it. We know that this robot was pretty good. It was actually able to defeat a heavyweight robot, believe it or not. You wouldn't think this small little robot was able to defeat a heavyweight, but it did. So yeah, it was able to defeat a heavyweight. So therefore we already know it's pretty good outside of Series 1. And it was still a pretty fast robot. Now, obviously, there was the lame excuse of, it broke down, we can't fix it, we're just going to eliminate ourselves because, they couldn't progress further on. Which, part of the rules if you have stock robots. And it does make you think, because obviously Wysiwyg was a good robot. Even for a stock robot, this was a good robot. Design-wise, it's another wedge, but like I said, it manages to make itself look at least appealing to the eyes. I quite like the patterning, the white and the blue stripe. The name on the metal, ramming blade looks great. And obviously, it has those bullet holes across the side, Yeah, Wysiwyg's good. Wysiwyg's good. I'm going to put it, let's see, I'm going to put it, right above Tracy, because like I said, Tracy's an ugly duckling, but it's okay. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the tier list for Series 1 First Wars. And Yeah, pretty much Robot the Bruce, even though it's a very basic looking robot, it makes up for it because it is the Perspex see-through armor, which looks so good on robots. It really does. Even in BattleBots, when they used Perspex armor, it looked so good. And it was so effective, so speedy, so beautifully engineered. Nemesis, obviously, second. Who doesn't love the Nemesis boys? Killer Tron, always a fan favorite, always one of my personal favorites. Roadblock, you know, it's an instant classic. And Mortars, wonderful robot. Just missing out on the S placement, or the S spot, is Recyclops, which, like I said, is a close S tier, but because it was struggling a bit with its reliability, and obviously it was kind of ponderous with the way it would flip robots, it just misses out, but still fantastic robot. So if we skip all the way to the middle section, we have quite a lot of robots which are like great designs, but they just weren't very effective. And Series 2 is just going to be the same thing. Although I think there will be a lot more effective but poor designs, maybe. And it's funny because a lot of the robots that are in the effective but poor design are arguably much better than the ones in the great design but ineffective category, which is kind of funny to think about, even though the designs just aren't very good. D tier, like I said, they have two very forgettable robots, but they're not dreadful in any sense of the word. F tier has just the worst of the worst. These are the ones that just suck. Like, there's no question in anyone's mind. These are awful robots. And then you got joke bots, which, you know, obviously Eubank, yeah, it's a stock robot, but it's a wonderful looking stock robot, and it is clearly there as a joke. It was there in the pits every other series. It was there during filming for people to just go at. It is just there to just make you laugh. Even the stats board does just take the piss. And obviously Psycho Sprout, there's no way to think that thing was going to win. It's completely useless, but you can't help but love it at the same time. So yeah, Uglybot is the worst robot in Series 1 by a long shot. It was just dreadful. And Robot the Bruce, in my opinion, was the best. So yeah, see you next time for another Robots tier list or tier list video. Obviously, you know, with Robots, there are certain series that had less robots than others, and there are some which had a lot more than others. So all I'm going to say is don't think that there's going to be loads of these videos released at the same time. It might take months or even half a year to get through them, because especially Series 3, 4, and 7, because those ones have so many robots. It's ridiculous. Even the extremes, I feel like, are going to have a lot to go through. And they have different weight classes as well. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who knows? See ya.